All right, hello, welcome back. This, for you guys, it might be a day, or who knows how long you guys viewed the video. Well, some of you guys might have given yourself enough time as myself. Let's start the second part of the resource page. So this one is going to be talking about horizontal and mostly focusing on horizontal shifts. Right, we're going to learn a few more definitions to help us graph more complex sine and cosine graphs. If you don't remember the parent functions or anything that I talked about in the last video, please view the last video. So let's get started. Horizontal shift H translates the graph phase shift H units horizontally. So pretty straightforward. The H shifts the graph H units horizontally. And you could see that X minus H, it's in the same place that it was before, except now we're introduced to the H and the B. So we're not expecting you guys to graph the B since it's a little bit more difficult and we're having to do this online school, but there is one example where I've included the B. So I'm gonna continue, and I'm gonna tell you when we get to that part. I'll notify you guys. H tells us where to start. Period change 2 pi over b is a stretch or shrink the graph horizontally. So this period change is 2 pi over b. So we're going to use that b value to describe that period change. And that's, if b equals 1, the period will stay the same. So the period is either going to get bigger or smaller depending on what value of b we have. And that's very important to understand. You don't necessarily have to graph it, but you do have to understand how that works. So reference point HK, which is the new origin. So we will get a new reference point. It's not going to be our center line or whatever that helps us graph the function. The reference point is something else. And I do want you guys to label the reference point in your graph. All right. So the critical spacing is period divided by 4. So it's just saying this is how it's going to be broken down, and we call that the critical spacing. Just introduction to a new definition. So if I ask you about the critical spacing, you're going to give me period divided by 4 type of thing. All right, so let's do the examples. First example, period, 2 pi. That's an ugly pi. There we go. Amplitude is 1, vertical shift up 3, horizontal shift, remember it's H is negative, so it goes right, pi over 2. Our reference point is going to be HK, so pi over 2 and 3. Critical spacing, 2 pi divided by 4, which gives us pi over 2. And in the middle, y equals 3. The maximum is y equals 4. And the minimum is y equals 2. And I will not go over I'll just tell you, it's k plus a. If you don't remember that formula, if you don't know what that means, look at the previous video. So let's label them y equals 3, y equals 4. So we know where center line is, y equals 2. And since it's getting more difficult, I could plot them. So I know that that's the origin. I'm just going to use my parent graph and plot the points based off the parent graph and its shifters. So I go up pi over 2, come back down at pi to 3, go back down at 3 pi over 2 to 2, and then at 2 pi, come back up. And then I could do the same thing with the other side. Go down to 2, negative pi is gonna be at 3, negative 3 pi over 2 is gonna go up to 4, and then negative 2 pi is gonna come back to the middle at y equals 3, right? Then you just draw your graph. Wow, that actually looks good. Until I spoke. There we go. And that's how you graph that. But we weren't given an A or a B. We were only given H in K. So now you guys know what H does to it. Right? It's cosine, but it looks like a sine graph. It's because it was shifted to the right one. There we go. Or right pi over 2. Pi over 2 is like 1, and then pi is kind of like 2, even though it's not technically equal to. But yeah, if in case I start saying that and you guys get mixed up, yeah, don't. Words are hard, okay? So let's do the second one. Let's go ahead and do it. The period is, well, I'm going to make a change to this problem. This problem, I'm going to include a b of -1/2. So this problem has a b of -1/2. You have to see it. You're not going to be required to graph it, but, right, so 2 pi is our normal one. But because we have a b, we have to divide it by 1/2. Absolute value of b, so it's going to be positive, which would give me 4 pi. Amplitude is going to be 1, vertical shift down 1, horizontal shift left pi because it's positive. Reference point is going to be negative pi and -1. Oh, wait up. Ah, man, I wish it was double-sided. I forgot to label RP for the for the reference point. I want you to label RP for the reference point. We'll do it for this one. I'm not going to waste my time and grab the other one. So, since critical spacing, since my period is 4 pi, I just divide it by 4, and my critical space is equal to pi. Middle, y equals -1, -1 plus 1, y equals 0, and -1 minus 1, y equals -2. So, let's look at that. I'm going to put y equals 0, y equals -1, so the y equals -1 is my middle, and y equals -2 is my min. So I have my max, middle, min, right? So it's a sine graph, went left pi, so I know it's going to start right here. It's going to start at the top. It's going to look like a very elongated cosine graph because it went left pi, right? And then at pi, I'm going to go down -1. And at 2 pi, I'm going to go down -2 because it's per every pi. My critical spacing is at every pi. That's how I would use critical spacing when it's not pi over 2. All right, so when I go down to -pi, do the same. Go down to -1, and then -2 pi will be my min. All right, time to graph it as ugly as possible. Whee! There we go. Yeah, little wee. All right. That's how B works. B will make it look like that. But we also had different shifters, such as left pi from H. So it's kind of unrecognizable from a sine graph. Well, if you can hear my cat in the background meowing crazily, since he mostly goes outdoors and basically is a terror upon the wildlife around here. Terrorizes everything. A hawk stole his prey once. That was a funny moment. So, we see the negative there, and it flips the graph, right? Period's going to be 2 pi because there's no b. Amplitude is going to be 3, vertical shift, up 2, horizontal shift, pi right. Gotta say where it's going, right pi over 2, it's positive. Reference point is gonna be pi over 2 and 2, right? Oh, crap. So my reference point up there was negative pi and negative 1. So I'm gonna put RP right up there. I want you guys to do that. That's why I'm emphasizing it. Don't let my forgetfulness, don't be as forgetful as me. So critical spacing is gonna be pi over 2 because it's the same. 2 pi divided by 4 is pi over 2. Middle is y equals 2. Max is 2 plus 3, which is y equals 5. And the min is 2 minus 3, which gives me y equals negative 1. So here we go. This is, so I'm going to write my middle y equals 2. Then y equals 5, way up here, new line. I'm not about to attempt to draw that because I can't draw a straight line. And down there, y equals negative 1. Use your imagination for y equals 5. Use it. So let's start. It's a sine graph. It's switched right pi. So I know it's going to start off looking like a cosine. Go up here. Then I'm going to hit pi over 2. It's going to hit at 2, the middle. And then pi is going to hit negative 1. And remember, the reference point is included in my graph. Now, is this always true? I mean, the last two were true, and I can't remember if the first one was true, but this isn't always the case. In the next problem, you're going to see why. So 3 pi over 2 goes up to 2. 2 pi is going to go up to 5. There we go. And then, if I graph the left side, negative pi over 2, 2. Negative pi, negative 1. Negative 3 pi over 2. I'm going to go up back to the middle at 2. And negative 2 pi is going to go back up to 5. There we go. Now just graph it. Take my time. Taking my time. All right, come back down. Go down through here. Come back. And there we go. So there's that graph with those shifters. Take it one step at a time. Do it per shifter. Don't do the whole thing in your head. Don't try to do it at once. Do these first so you know what you're going to graph. All right, let's do the last one. You guys are thinking, whoa, this is the one where, because it's the last one, where the reference point isn't going to be on the graph. You're correct to assume that because I did mention it. So, negative flips it. What does the period do? The period, oh, what is the period? 2 pi, right? No b. What's the amplitude? 2. Vertical shift, down 3. Horizontal shift, right, pi. Reference point, pi and negative 3. Critical spacing, pi over 2. Middle, y equals negative 3, because y equals k. Max, negative 3 plus 2 gives me y equals negative 1. Min, negative 3 minus 2, y equals negative 5. Oh, here we go again. I'm not drawing that line. So I know my min, y equals 5. Pretend you can see that. And then go up, y equals negative 3 is my middle. And then y equals negative 1 is my max. So where is it going to start out from? Once again, since it's shifted to the right pi, it's gonna stay the same. Cosine will stay the same. Plus, it has no b shift. That's why sine didn't stay the same in part b. Because of that b shift, it still looked like a cosine graph. So pi over 2, I'm gonna go down to negative 3. Pi, I'm going to go down to 5, negative 5. 3 pi over 2, I'm going to go back up to negative 3. And then that was a negative 3. Oops. My eyes. My eyes. All right. And then at 2 pi, it's going to be going up to -1. So what's going to happen on the left side? Negative pi over 2, -3, negative pi, 5, -3 pi over 2, back to 3, -3, and then -2 pi, we're going to go back to -1 for the maximum. So if I were to graph this, gonna look like that, gonna come back down, go back up, right there. Remember, it'll never go between, it will never go over my maximum or my minimum. All right, now let's look at the reference point. That's gonna be at pi -3. Oh, would you look at that? It's not connected. So you can't have sometimes you won't have a reference point on the graph. So don't assume that it's always going to be on the graph. All right, like I said before, if you have any questions, you will see me. When you see me, please ask questions. Don't stay silent. I want you guys to understand this. I want you guys to pass. So yeah, see you in the next video.